fear is always going to be there, right? But the important thing is that we're able to nurture and practice. Practice. I use the term practice for courage because I think courage is not it's not an idea and it's not an emotion. Courage is a decision and action. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ripples of Courage podcast. I am Rock, your host, and I'm so excited to welcome 2024 with you and with this episode where I will reflect on 2023 and how making courage the theme of my year has allowed me to do the things that I really want to do and has allowed me to see some of the things that I just thought of before or dreamed of before start to come to life. And more importantly, I would like to share with you some of my insights and learnings, and also the mindset shifts that I did that allowed me to build and practice courage last year. And hopefully, you'll find some of the insights also useful to you as you start the year with the intention of living the life that you want. And so, let's get started. So, just a little bit of a backstory. 2022 was a very rough year for me, probably one of my lowest years, and I really struggled. And one of the things that I learned in that year as I was trying to navigate that, difficulty was also learning about myself and finding out that from the people that I've used to work before, learning that one of the things that they all agreed is something that I could improve on was courage. And so towards the end of 2022, I started challenging myself, sort of, and trying to become more courageous and trying to step more outside of my comfort zone and just, pursuing the things that I know deep inside are true to me and that I really want to do. And I started the year last year with that mindset. Like, this year is going to be a year where I will build and practice courage. And yeah, that was the theme of 2023. And so I guess just to start with sharing some of the things that happened last year that I think were a product of me stepping out of my comfort zone and facing my fears and practicing courage. And one of those things, of course, is this podcast, which one of the big things that I did in the beginning of 2023. So I launched the Repulsive Courage podcast. And as the name suggests, it's courage because the idea really is, you know, an act of courage can have a ripple effect in our life in that it allows us to do the things we want to do and allows us to keep building on that courage, keep building our self-confidence and the ability to face our fears, and also externally allowing us to perhaps even inspire others to also find their own courage and start that, ripple effect. So that's the idea of the podcast. And it's one of the things that I'm really proud of, even though at some point I really had a difficulty sustaining it because of schedule, but also because I still face a lot of fears around um, doing the podcast. It's always a challenge. It's always a battle to hit the publish button and also to hit the record button. Like every stage of the podcast production is a challenge for me. Like I have all the ideas in my head and it's very clear. It's like I have a script already in my head, but just like setting up and then clicking the record button and finally publishing all those stages in itself is a battle. and a practice of courage. So I'm very proud that at least I was able to launch this last year, had some episodes, and this year I really intend to do more of this because I really love doing this. I really like learning and really like sharing what I've learned. And for me, being able to share what I'm learning is also the best form of learning for me. So because this allows me to process my learning even more. And yeah, I also hope that, whoever gets to listen also learns with me. So that was one of the things, the Rebels of Courage podcast. Another thing that really um, I'm really, really grateful for last year was We Amplify, the agency that I started last year. So I've been doing freelance work since 2018. Well, actually, since 2009, I started teaching English to Japanese students. I That was my very first uh, real work. But in 2018, I started doing freelance work, which is more around web development, process automation. And I had clients that I worked with that I'm very grateful that I'm still working right now in the agency. But the courageous thing around this was that um, I for some reason, I just have really a big problem with delegation, or like making other people work. For some reason, I feel a lot of shame and guilt around that, and I think part of it, like the fear there, is that you know the people that I will hire or that I will work with will start finding out that I'm not really good at what I'm doing. I'm just uh, mediocre at stuff, and maybe that's true, but it's also not the point. But there is fear in that. There's fear that you know um, I will not be able to lead them properly, and they will just see all my quirks and all the issues with me, and so there's a very big fear of expanding and actually growing a team. But I realized last year that it's also stopping me from this opportunity of actually, one, serving more clients, which would therefore, two, increase my income and would allow me to um, achieve some of my financial goals, and have the peace of mind, because there's a lot of baggage as well, right? If you have, of course, if your income isn't stable, um, and yeah, having that peace of mind that even if I will pursue my other interests, like this podcast, like the nonprofit projects that I really want to work on, and other things I want to do, starting the agency has allowed me to gain that some level of uh, financial uh, peace, peace of mind. Yeah. So, but yeah, delegating was difficult for me, but that was the thing that I had to conquer, and it's really just also um, letting myself be vulnerable, I guess. Letting people in, and just allowing that to happen. And yeah, I'm very grateful for that. So from doing freelance work, I finally took that courage to expand my team, and that allowed me to serve more clients, and has a ripple effect in my life, really. One of the things that I really love about it, that was an unintended consequence, I would say, is that I actually get to also provide some livelihood to other people, right? Which I didn't realize was a very great feeling. Like I really enjoyed it when I sent. the payment to my partners, to my contractors. It's really, really fulfilling. And yeah, and I'm also just, learning a lot and really very happy with the relationship that I have with my team. It's just a bonus, I guess. So, but yeah, that's another thing that happened last year that I've been thinking about, and I've been pondering about, because I know the opportunities as well in the business, but I just haven't really, taken the steps. And at least last year, I've done that. Still in the early process, nothing big, but you know we're getting there. Hopefully. So that's another thing. And then the other one that I'm really, really, really happy about is I finally started and launched Flourish. So, Flourish Mental Health Initiative Incorporated. It's a nonprofit that I started with a couple other people, which aims to make evidence based and cost effective mental health interventions accessible to Filipino adolescents. So, just to share a little bit of data around this and why it was so compelling for me to work on this problem is that of course, there's a big scale of problems, about 15 million cases of, and this is 2019 data, 15 million estimated cases of mental health disorder and self harm in the Philippines, and that the Philippines is the second country in Southeast Asia with the highest rate of healthy life years lost due to mental health problems. And the most staggering data that really rocked me was that data of the Global Health Survey by the WHO. The 2019 data says or finds that among 13 to 15-year-old Filipino adolescents, 24.4%, almost one fourth, had attempted suicide at least once in the past 12 months prior to that survey. And that was before the pandemic. So imagine what the number might be now. We don't have the data yet. So, but yeah, it's a very compelling problem for me. And the thing with Flourish is that as early as 2015, I have already thought about working on mental health. I wasn't clear about like how to work on it, what exactly would I do, but I just had this idea that our youth needs to learn these very important life skills of taking care of our mental health, of our emotional well-being, and it's just something that we don't learn. And I think that it's very fundamental. And we do learn about these things. As for me, like my experience, I learned about these skills, these things as an adult. Some of them I learned in therapy because I was already struggling, but we can learn them earlier. And so that's what we're trying to do in Flourish. But um yeah, basically that's the project that I've really been wanting to start. I didn't know concretely how, but yeah, last year I was able to finally start working on it, and little by little, uh and at some point it just reached some momentum. And luckily as well, although I tried to do it more than once, but luckily we got funding for the project. So yeah, I feel really grateful, and it's always surreal actually. Every time I work on it, sometimes I still when I'm so into it, and so into the you know things that we're doing, actual things that I'm doing, that I forget about the big picture, and like how surreal it is that I am actually working now on the thing that I really wanted to work on many years ago. But I remember that many times, and it's just so surreal. It's hard to believe, but I'm just filled with gratitude. But I think, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later. There's really just a shift in me and in how I think that allowed me to finally pursue it and pursue all these things. And I'm going to share it later. But last thing I want to share as a form of celebration for 2023 is that I'm also very proud that finally I'm able to provide my parents a decent and comfortable home. And I'm very, very happy about this because it's one of my top goals. I really, really wanted to give this to them because um, I grew up actually moving from one place to another, many places, because we didn't have our own house or own home, and so like growing up, it's just it's just a dream that's been, I would say, been planted in my head that in the future I'll make sure that happens. And also my parents live in the province, and there's they experience a lot of typhoon, and it's just so important for me to know that they are safe, and that if there's strong typhoon or like there's flood, that they're going to be okay. And I feel like that the house that they have now will give me that peace of mind. And yeah, it's just a great thing. But the courageous thing about that is that we've been talking about it, I and my parents, and in March, I almost didn't want to start the construction because I was so scared that I would run out of money and that I wouldn't have enough resources to actually see it through. But I mean, rationally speaking, I can afford it. Like I look at my income, um, and yeah, I can afford it. But I was just also so scared about like, oh, what if suddenly one of our projects in the agency just stopped, and one of the clients just quit on us, all these things. And like, what if something happens that actually we wouldn't be able to afford it at some point. But yeah, the thing with fear is that it's irrational, right? And courage is the rational response to fear. And so, just with proper calculations, like okay, actually can get started. But the magic here was that when I agreed to start the construction, I just had like a very modest image of what we will have. I mean, the house is still very modest. It's just plain two-story house with two rooms on the second floor, and nothing grand. But but yet when we started the construction, I was just thinking, if we can get the just the foundation built, and then we have the second floor and they have that roof, and then the first floor, even if it's not done, but it's a space that would still be better than the previous space, then that should be all right. But I guess you know with but also I mean, I believe in blessing and luck, but of course it also happens when you do good work. And so yeah, we're just very fortunate that more clients have got more projects that I was able to see through. And yeah, and I'm just so very happy about it. um yeah, I guess those are the main things that I'm really like proud of in 2023. And they aren't really perfect, they aren't done, they aren't um like um like super wow, whatever. But to me, they're a big achievement in that um, I I was able to push beyond my fears of. I actually get started. Sometimes just getting started is what we need. And finally, I got started in 2023. So hopefully, I can keep the momentum. And honestly, I have anxiety over that. I feel a bit anxious about that. That 2023 felt quite easy, or like not easy, but it felt like quite in flow, and like things were falling into place. And there's some fear in me that fear that what if I am not able to keep this up in 2024. But um fear is always going to be there. Right? But the important thing is that we're able to nurture and practice. Practice. I use the term practice for courage because I think courage is not it's not an idea, and it's not an emotion. Courage is a decision and action. So yeah, as long as I practice courage in 2024, I think I'm gonna be fine. Um, so yeah, and now I want to share, and this is the more important part of this episode. So I hope you're still there. I'd like to share more about the ways that I built and practiced courage in my life, and many of these things are actually mind shifts in how I think and how I approach life. And hopefully you find some value in what I will share. So the first thing that really helped me is giving myself permission. So allowing myself, giving myself permission to do what I want to do. So the story is that I actually faced a lot of rejections towards the end of 2022, and even up to like early like January 2023. I faced some rejections. Some of them were heartbreaking because I really wanted them, but I faced rejection. And I realized I was chasing for other people's permission. Like, what if they didn't, you know, if they didn't hire me, or if they didn't approve the grant? Why that would stop me from pursuing the thing that I want to pursue, right? And so I realized I was sort of using them as a way to give myself permission to do the thing I want to do. And of course, I wasn't getting it. But then I realized I just need my permission. And I wasn't giving it to myself. I wasn't allowing myself to try to do what I want to do, to start and to fail and to succeed. If you don't allow yourself to start, you're not allowing yourself to fail, but also not allowing yourself to succeed, or, to have whatever experience, whatever outcome, whatever it is that you're going to have if only you did the thing. And I wasn't giving that to myself because if you were listening to the podcast, you know that I used to be really hard on myself. And it was a very big shift that I just need to allow myself. I just need to trust myself, and I just need to be okay with me trying. So that was the first thing, giving myself permission. The second thing that really helped me, and this is like still a mind shift, is that I I stopped associating my worth or my self-worth to the outcomes of my actions. And I I embraced this mindset of this is an experiment. I am just experimenting. And that was really very, very helpful. It really changed it for me because if you're listening to the podcast, you know that I struggled with perfectionism. And the thing with perfectionism, of course, you set really high standards and you do it. You have very rigid criteria for what standard you have. But the key thing about it is that you associate your self worth on achieving that standard. And I've learned to no longer associate my self worth to whatever standard that I set for myself, or like whatever outcomes of my actions would be. And instead, my self-worth is more about, did I act according to my values? Did I do what I said I want to do? Did I allow myself to try? Am I experimenting enough? And that experiment as well, that, just that word also like changes how I see things. Because we're usually scared not of the action, but of the potential negative outcome of things, right? We're scared of what might happen, not of doing the thing. But having the mindset of, this is an experiment, change a lot how I deal with the outcomes of my actions. So failure has become the lesson, and try to see how this works. If it fails, I'm not doing it correctly. Maybe I can learn something from it. Maybe it's not the thing for me. But I'm just experimenting and seeing how I could try this, how this could pan out, right? And it's also true for the small things that I'm doing with some of the routines I'm trying to some of the habits I'm trying to include in my routine. I'm experimenting whether they work for me or not. And if they don't work, then it's okay. It's not the outcome that's important. It's me trying and experimenting. Of course, I do want to caveat. There's a thought in my mind that popped like, okay, still choose what you experiment on. Okay, so you still want to choose what you experiment on, and normally, like, if you think really clearly about the things that you're doing, especially if this is around your goals and the things that you really want to do, if you really just reflect on it and see where your fear is coming from, you'll understand that there's really not a lot of risks in trying, except for the risk of you not liking the outcome, right? So for those things that it's about how you would approach and accept the outcome, then experiment, obviously. uh and if it's something that's risky for your health, risky for your finances, of course you still want to practice discernment, and you still want to have calculated risks, right, when experimenting. But generally, again, fear is this irrational um, feeling about things. There's some level of truth, and fear is good because it signals something, right? It signals to you what you care about. It signals to you that there are risks associated, and so it's just a signal for you to reflect and study what you're trying to do, and you'll see that it's not so bad. And usually, as this is my experience, and my year last year was really experimental, and my experience is that the fear is always worse than the thing itself. Like, even for the things that, ended up not being really good, or like not perfect or whatever, it's usually not as bad as the fear. So, yeah, at least for me, that was the case. So, experiment and do not associate your self worth to the outcomes. So, yeah. And then another thing that helped me is having this mantra of part of the adventure. It's just part of the journey, part of the adventure. I really like this mantra because it helped me a lot. Because, things don't always happen as smoothly or as planned as we planned them to be, right? But I realized that all the setbacks and the challenges make up the journey. It sounds cliche, but it's true. And this mindset has also allowed me to get comfortable with mistakes, because I used to really obsess about my mistakes. Like, I did this thing, and like, how could I, do this differently? Like, what? And all the other things that that may have happened because of that silly mistake that I did. I used to obsess a lot about that. But somehow, when, last year, using this mantra of like, it's part of the adventure, this part of the journey, it somehow lowered, the anxiety, or lowered the very strong emotion that I used to associate with failure, or mistakes. And it just made it easier for me to try again. When I fail or when I make mistakes, it just made it easier to try again, because that's part of the journey. That's how you learn. And life is an iterative process. I used to think, or at some point, I probably learned it from someone or from somewhere, but I used to think that, I can really plan my life perfectly, like, I can plan my day up to the hour. I can plan my goals. What do I achieve? And I can be intentional about everything. And it's good to try, but the reality is, there's a lot of things that are beyond our control, and things don't always happen as planned, and they usually don't. And it really helps to prepare for those eventualities. Like, you have a plan B, plan C, plan whatever. And also, just the mindset that it's okay. You can try again. It's part of the adventure. And it makes it fun, right? Because I realized, when I imagine like my happiest experience with my family and with friends, and I would usually recall like the setbacks, or like, the funniest part of the experience would always be because something wrong happened, right? Of course, I'm talking about, petty, silly stuff happening, but it's also true. Um, it's part of life. It's part of the adventure. And then the next thing, which is so 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 important, is having the clarity, having clarifying my values, gaining clarity about what I value in life. And this is so important to me, because having this clarity just allows me to understand more my motivations and also my fears. Because sometimes the things that we're scared the most of are also the things that we value or we want the most. And when we realize that, it gives us the drive and the courage to face our fears. This reminds me of, I think, George Adair's, I don't know how to pronounce, but of the quotation, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. So yeah, I mean that quote um is powerful reminder that to achieve our deepest desires, our deepest wants, the things that we really want, often we must confront our fears and we must step beyond our comfort zone. And but also, when we are clear with our values, we find that it's actually worth confronting our fears for something that we really care about. And example of this for me is that like the podcast. I mean, I really care about I really care about the message of the podcast. I don't know if I'm at this point able to really, send out the message that I want to send through the podcast, but I do have a very clear reason, and it's really aligned with my values that I want to do this. And and I have so much fears and anxiety and also like shame or like embarrassment around these things for whatever reason. But because I understand why I'm doing this and why it's important to me. And this is also true like with other things I'm doing, like Flourish, that project. I mean, it's hard, right? And there's a lot of like, a lot of small and big things that I have to I have to overcome or I have to deal with. Like every little thing is a decision. Everything is a decision. So everything could be a mistake. Everything could be a failure, and there's so much fear and anxiety around that. But there's an option to just not do it. Why do it? Why bother? But I really care about it, and I think it's worth it. It's worth trying. It's worth um, experiencing whatever I might experience, whatever it is. Um, I guess it's gonna be worth it. So clarifying my values really helped me find motivation and also find reason to face my fears and to find the courage to do these things. Um, yeah, and I guess finally, um, one thing I want to share, and this is very important, as with everything else, but another thing that I really learned, and I really really want to share this message, is that help is okay and it's necessary. So um, that is perhaps one of the most transformative mind shifts I had. So I used to take pride being independent and self-reliant, and somehow I feared and I used to be embarrassed to seek help. Um, yeah, but it took me reaching a very low point in my life in 2020 to finally find the courage to and humility, the courage and humility to seek help and to accept help. And you know it has improved my life significantly. And so I shared earlier like all the things that I achieved, like that I've done, and I want you to know that I didn't do all those things by myself. No, not at all. I got a lot of help, and there's nothing embarrassing about that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be ashamed of that. And yeah, it's very transformative for me because um like with Amplify, right? With we Amplify, I need to have a team. I need to hire contractors, and I couldn't do that before because again, I couldn't delegate work. I couldn't, I couldn't. I don't know why, but I couldn't uh, delegate work. Um, maybe it's pride. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's ego. Maybe because I'm scared. They judge me like, oh, she's not even good, and all those things. And maybe that's also true. Uh, but um, I'm also, but there's also like, um, would it be okay if if this thing that I'm building isn't built by me? Then I realized, what kind of thinking is that? There's a lot of ego and pride in that, I think. And yeah, so, and there's courage in humility, right? It doesn't seem like it's automatic. I don't know, maybe I didn't think about it that way before, but there's a lot of courage in humility because yeah, there's a lot of courage in humility, there's a lot of courage in vulnerability. It's not weakness. Seeking help is not weakness, it is strength. It's courageous. It's courageous. And that was the very first courageous thing I did. I think I really changed my mind. So, no, it really changed my life. So yeah, I have a coach. I still see my therapist. I'm part of support groups, and I've learned to delegate work without feeling guilty or feeling ashamed of it. And it's really transformed my life. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna wrap here. I'm gonna wrap it here. Um, so yeah, just to summarize, the things that the mind shifts that helped me build and practice courage last year are: first, giving myself permission, allowing myself. Second, is not associating my self worth to the outcomes of my actions and having a mindset of this is an experiment. And number three, the mantra, part of the journey, part of the adventure. And just enjoying the ride, again, not associating my self worth to the outcome, but to the everyday decision of showing up and practicing courage. And all setbacks are part of the journey. And then, of course, clarifying my values, understanding that it is worth stepping out of my comfort zone for this thing that I really, really value. And it starts with understanding what I value. So, clarifying my values. And finally, help is okay and it is necessary. It isn't weakness, it is strength. There's strength in being vulnerable. And yeah, that that's the uh, summary, I guess, of of this episode and my reflection of how making courage the theme of my year. So maybe you're wondering what would be the theme of my 2024. And I thought about it, and it's still courage. 2024 is still about courage. It's still about practicing courage. Because again, courage is not an idea, it's not a feeling, it's not an emotion, it's not an end result. It's decision and action. And I want 2024 and maybe the rest of my life to be filled with courage, to be filled with all these small things that I do and decide to do despite of all my fears and anxieties. And I'm still scared a lot of times. That's still there. Um, The difference is that I no longer allow the fears to stop me, and I no longer stress myself out because of all this, fears, and because they are going to be there. And I think I like it that way as well, because it's also a clue, like when you stop feeling scared, maybe you are in your comfort zone already, which is not bad. At first, you can enjoy that, but also that's when you know that um, there's no more growth. And so fear to me has somehow changed the meaning. I mean, the meaning of fear has somehow changed for me. Now it's a signal for me that if I'm not anymore scared of doing this thing, then maybe I'm not growing anymore. And it's okay if I push a little bit to a to an extent where I have this good enough fear, you know, where I still push myself, but I don't hurt myself in the process. And I don't break myself. I don't ruin myself in the process. So, yeah. Yeah. Um, and I guess that's it. I hope there's something in this episode that you find useful. And regardless, I wish you a happy and meaningful 2024. And I hope that you find the courage to do the things that you want to do, and that you get to practice courage every waking hours of your life. And yeah, to living the life that we want. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode. I'm going to be conquering my fears around the podcast, and we'll be publishing more content in the coming months. So I hope you continue to join me in this journey. And thank you so much. I'm very grateful for your time, for your attention. And I'm sending you lots of love, lots of courage. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful time.